what's remarkable to me is how the rating agencies, along with the banks, along with the financial press, they all gang up. They all work together. They all collude to discredit folks that they don't like and to lionize the people they do like. And just because El Salvador made Bitcoin legal tender, for some reason, well, I know the reason, obviously, the fiat money world was a big threat, and they gang up. Bitcoin is now emerging after, the halving downtrend that always happens. It looks like it's developing into this new bull market. And I see that the shitcoin market is kind of being left in the dust. This is just another, every day the surprises keep coming where the FUD and the press and the mainstream press, they just are so wrong. And is there going to come a time when these outlets like the New York Times, et cetera, are going to say, we were just dead wrong about El Salvador for the last 5-6 years? El Salvador pays back $800 million maturing bond. President Nayib Bukele says the country was the first in the world to use Bitcoin's legal tender. El Salvador's $800 million bond issue set to mature on Tuesday has been repaid with interest. Finance Minister Alejandro Zelaya confirmed. In the past year, almost every legacy international news outlet said that because of our, quote, Bitcoin bet, El Salvador was going to default on the debt in January of 2023, since we had an $800 million bond maturing today, Bukele said, literally hundreds of articles. Bukele noted that he's only been able to find one article from a Colombian newspaper that's published news of the repayment. Stacey, this is really just taking everybody by surprise who had no expectation for this to happen. Talking to people here and professional people and political people, they mentioned that the FUD and the anti-Salvador press corps out there, they use the rating agencies are really an extension of this press, the corrupted press, and they use the rating agencies rating, whether it's double B, triple C, A minus, A plus. This is really used as not to signify what the underlying strength of the asset is, because clearly they mispriced this asset by a huge mile. And they didn't even come close. But what's remarkable to me is how the rating agencies, along with the banks, along with the financial press, they all gang up. They all work together. They all collude to discredit folks that they don't like and to lionize the people they do like. And just because El Salvador made Bitcoin legal tender, for some reason, well, I know the reason, obviously, the fiat money world was a big threat, and they gang up. So interest rates are used to create bantustans, where those who don't have access directly to the Fed or they're not Wall Street banks, they have to pay these exorbitant fees. And but if you do have access to the Fed or you're friends of the Fed, you end up paying incredibly cheaper rates for money. And when you pay incredibly cheap rates for money, the ability to make more money with your money goes up. If you're paying a lot of interest for the borrowed money, of course, your ability to make money on that borrowed money, and a lot of times, is virtually impossible if your cost of funds is in excess of whatever hopes you have in the profit potential. And credit card rates continue to move up. They never went down when rates went to zero. Credit card rates never went down below 16%. Even though if it was a true interest rate curve, rates would have come down across the board, including credit card rates, and you would have had your Visa, MasterCard would have had a 5% rate if rates on the Fed were zero. But they never went down to below 16 or 17%. And now they're, climbing higher because interest rates are moving higher. So interest rates are really an talked about fulcrum or a wedge, that's used to kind of for favoritism and cronyism, isn't it? We moved into an era really up until a couple of years ago, especially 1 year ago, where the ability to move rates in bond markets gave countries the power to dictate economic policy broadly across the globe, regardless of what the actual cost structure were for the commodities that were running the globe. But that seems to have all changed now, and it has to do with a few things. Number one, you've got the emerging markets and the BRICS are saying, guess what? We're kind of moving away from the dollar as aggressively as we possibly can. And we're going to charge actual rates of production for commodities. And that's causing inflation. And then you have El Salvador that's saying, let's make Bitcoin legal tender. And that just brought in a whole slew of benefits that, getting back to the story about this $800 million bond repayment that was just 3 months ago given a possible, a chance chance of happening of near zero by the rating agencies with a triple C rating, happening flawlessly without any problem. And that kind of benefit is just percolating throughout the entire economy. It has a knock-on effect, Stacey. Like we see it with tourism, we see it with entrepreneurialism, we see it just percolating throughout the whole economy. So it's that if you can control the buzz, which is controlling the media and controlling interest rates, controlling the perception, you can control prices. And if you can have the algorithmic, ability on your side, you can squeak out profits, regardless of what the underlying economic conditions are. And that's where we're in the economy that we're in today, is that if you can control the buzz, you can control the profits, even regardless of what the underlying fundamentals are. The fundamentals were nowhere to be found, and now they seem to be reasserting themselves. Back in London, we met up with the folks who were the yes men. And they were very big in what they called culture jamming. Mm-hmm. So they would go into a store, for example, and relabel a product, instead of it being all natural cereal, they would change the name to it or something. And then they'd record people's reaction to it. And there was the Adbusters was a magazine at that time. I don't know if it's still around. But then the meme wars took that culture jamming notion, and they, of course, went social media with it and electronic with it and instantaneous global network with it. And that became a lot more pervasive and pernicious and a big factor on the political level, as demonstrated by Hillary. Bitcoin is now emerging after, the halving downtrend that always happens. Looks like it's developing into this new bull market. And I see that the shitcoin market is kind of being left in the dust, which is going to happen at some point. That'll be really the story, is that we don't really have a total separation between Bitcoin and the shitcoin market. And how Bitcoin is a magic mirror. So with President Bukele, he was already probity. He already had a moral and ethical quality to him, and Bitcoin brought it out, and he's president of the country, and it just elevates the country. Whereas with other folks, like you mentioned, Sam Bankman-Fried, the magic mirror of Bitcoin accentuated his worst qualities. The guy was already nebbish to begin with, and then when you have that focused energy of Bitcoin, which is pure good, it rots him from the inside, and he becomes this incredibly terrible person. A list of 20 or 25 other executives in the industry at that time signed on to essentially try to increase block size and to commercialize Bitcoin in a way that they felt was necessary for their businesses as startups and VCs. Yes. And it was the nodes, ultimately the plebs, who won the war, and they walked off the battlefield defeated. And but those guys, all those guys from the New York Agreement, ended up here now in 2022, 2023, really the ship hitting the rocks. And the guys over there, David Bailey at Bitcoin Magazine, he's organizing a whole campaign for the GBTC with Grayscale. Yeah. And the shareholders are being organized, and they're trying to get a major lawsuit going because he's got this enormous pile of Bitcoin that he's charging 2% a year on, and apparently he gambled and lost a significant portion of shares, in the markets and things like that. So again, to get back to this idea where even the earliest guys, and Barry Silbert was very early, and Roger Ver is very early, but it doesn't mean that they got Bitcoin. It doesn't mean that they grokked Bitcoin, that they really understand it through and through. Well, we were trying to find out, 2014, Tour de Meester, who's an excellent writer. People should follow him. He's a true Bitcoiner, always has been. And we were trying to, handicap what country would make Bitcoin legal tender, because we saw that as really an important phase in the development of the revolution, the movement. And we mentioned a couple of names. Didn't mention El Salvador. It didn't really pop up on anyone's list at that time. Bukele had to be in a place where the magic of Bitcoin came, and there was this combustion that occurred, and that now we have it legal tender. Now we have all these things happening, like this $800 million bond. Really, the story of the day, $800 million bond paid down with interest. And, this is just another, every day the surprises keep coming where the FUD and the press and the mainstream press, they just are so wrong. And is there going to come a time when these outlets like the New York Times, et cetera, are going to say, we were just dead wrong about El Salvador for the last 5-6 years? If in fact Satoshi is coming to speak to the world through you, and you're going to give voice to Satoshi, it's coming up now from the innermost sanctum of the protocol. As we head into this new, rally, it's a rally time. and the next halving cycle, and as the profound impact of the aesthetic beauty of the protocol lifts the spirit of planet Earth, and the El Salvador model of prosperity, peace, love, and goodness is spread globally, it's all from your bosom into the heart and the soul of the collective unconscious, and we have that massive orgasm, that collective global orgasm I've been talking about now for years. It's on their way. Institutions are designed to put up barriers and roadblocks to bad thinking and psychotic behavior.
Yes.
But what happens when you have a society now around the world where all the institutions have been hyperinflated away to being meaningless, and they're not functioning. It's very dysfunctional. So now these bad ideas that can catch fire, wildfire, and cause havoc, there's nothing there to stop them.